Hello and what's up everyone, Thunderbob here, and tonight I'm checking out some more Diablo 2 Resurrected. Specifically, I am playing a Hydra Sorceress tonight. The reason I'm playing a Hydra Sorceress tonight is because Blizzard has announced changes are coming to Hydra. And this is by far my favorite skill in the game. I don't currently have a Hydra Sorceress on Battle.net because it's kind of garbage. You know, you can make it work with really high-end gear, and I'm going to demonstrate that, but changes are finally coming, and it may actually be a pretty good build. I want to demonstrate what it can do currently and talk a little bit about what might be possible with the coming changes. I have listened to that section of the recap many times, and I think I've got a picture of what could happen, what I hope is happening. We're going to talk through that. I might touch on some other parts of the coming changes, but I'm not going to talk about all of them. There are people that have done full recaps, and that's not really what I'm doing here. Specifically, I'm talking about my favorite change that's coming. So Hydra Sorceress, of course, uses the level 30 Sorceress skill, Hydra. This build, you max Hydra, you max its synergies, Fireball and Firebolt, and then I'm going with Frozen Orb. We'll look real quickly at the gear. I got a Death Fathom, Nightwing Veil. These are basically to get my orb damage up a little bit. Enigma, and people are going to say, what? Why are you using Enigma? Okay. Right now, to get Hydra and its 2 synergies, to get 1 in Static Field, to get 1 in Frozen Armor, get all the way down to Frozen Orb, and get 1 in Cold Mastery, basically takes all of my points, even for going these 2 using Enigma. That's why I'm using Enigma. My hope, actually, and they talked about this in the Sorcerer section, is that they're going to be touching some of the synergy requirements. I would love if they took some of the synergies away. And what if Hydra was one of those? What if instead of 2-3% synergies, maybe it was 1-5%? This is wishful thinking, but I would love if they just made like Fireball its 1 synergy and it was 5%. And we would lose a little bit of damage, but with the casting delay being removed, I think it would definitely make up for it. And then we'd have 20 points to more easily play around with going a dual elemental spec. As right now, it's really tight, even going with unsynergized Frozen Orb, unless you want to drop, you know, a synergy or 2 from Hydra, and then, you know, Hydra's pretty weak. Yeah, so let's keep going through the gear. Sandstorm Trek, Spirit. This is a +2 amulet with FCR, and I realize this is a level 10 item. This is obviously not legit. This is an item that carried forward with me from some old Diablo 2 save files, and I realize it's not legit. This is really just for testing purposes. This is, you know, very high-end. Got an SOJ, got an Arachnids, SOJ, Mage Fist, Merc. I threw Infinity on. You don't really need it. It's not for fire that... I mean, it's useful, but it's not as beneficial as it would be for like a lightning source. Stats, just enough strength for your gear. Everything else, throw in vitality. Yeah. Talking about the changes. So Hydra, it sounds like they say that they're removing the cast delay. They actually say 2 different things. At one point, they say with the removal of the cast delay, and then someone else mentioned the shortening of the cast delay. I'm really hoping it's a complete removal of the cast delay, because what that would mean is you could drop Hydra and you could cast Frozen Orb in between, because Hydra would not initiate a cooldown on Frozen Orb. So that's my hope, is what that means. If they just lowered it and maybe it's like a 0.25 now or something like that, that kind of screws up my thinking here. But if they've removed the cooldown from Hydra, you could drop your 5 Hydras and immediately start throwing out Frozen Orb, which would definitely be a cool gameplay loop. The other nice thing is Hydra does a hell of a lot of damage. If you actually do the math, so this is not the maximum Hydra damage, but it's pretty decent Hydra damage. 5,000 damage, but that is damage done by each head of the Hydra, and you can get 5 Hydras down. And if they remove the cooldown from Hydra, you can drop these all probably in half a second. So 3 heads, each doing 5,000 damage. There you got, what, 15,000 damage? And then you got 5 Hydras that you get down at once. That's, 75,000 damage, which happens for 10 seconds. That's 750,000 damage from your 5 Hydras that you drop. The only problem is it doesn't pierce. It doesn't, it's not AoE in any form, really. Back in the day, I actually ran a Hydra source. It was one of my first Hydra sources that I ever went with. One of my first sorceresses I ever went with. And when Lord of Destruction came out, that was the first character I played. I was thinking with the changes, maybe it would be effective, and I ran with that character for a very long time, and it did okay. I think an area where it works particularly well at is for running Mephisto, because you can mostly bypass, all the monsters and just drop the Hydras on top of him, and it kind of murders him, and I'm just going to demonstrate that super quick here. And now, I'm not going to use static, but imagine if you could drop all 5 of those. That would drop him very, very fast. And actually what I'll do, I'm going to do this in player 8 again, just to show it even with more health. Okay, let's just throw on players 8. This will give us more time to get our Hydras down and kind of demonstrate the damage it potentially could do. I love single player where the map's always the same. Okay. So here, 1 Hydra, probably not, like, instantly burning it down. 2, 3... But when you get all 5 of them down, he actually goes down reasonably fast. Nice. Maybe not as fast as a Blizzard Sorceress, maybe not as fast as, like Fireball was doing pre-nerf. But imagine being able to drop 5 Hydras, immediately, just like a Trap Assassin would, and then being able to, in the meantime, use your Frozen Orb. I know you could do that with Fireball, and I should have been doing it there. That would have made it even faster, but I was just trying to demonstrate the Hydra damage. I think it'll be considerably better. That damage will start right away, so you could drop 5 Hydras, you deal in 75,000 damage, basically per volley of their attacks. To a single target, and then have your orb to deal with the, big packs of enemies. I'm gonna see about doing another area. Okay, so I'm gonna try to do a Baal run, and then I might also try to do a Cal run, just to show an area where it does reasonably well at, and an area that it is not as good at. And I'm just going to do this at player 1, because this build is not as effective at player 8, to be honest. It's, right now, with no changes, it can do player 1 reasonably well. Player 8, it's a little bit more of a slog. Of course, it was right there. I'm excited about a lot of the other changes, too. I think the changes to the mercs, depending on what they end up being, could be so big to the meta of the game. Like, being able to use something other than Act 2 is just insane to me. I mean, I know there are some people, Act 1 mercs are pretty good for certain things, throwing on Faith on them. But I just love more options there. And this is kind of the downfall of the skills, where you gotta throw out all your Hydras, and it takes a few seconds. And actually, I had a video up just the day before they announced all of their changes that pretty much said this is what I would love to see. I would love to see them remove the cooldown from Hydra. And what do you know? That's the change they went with. Super, super excited about that. It's kind of nice for Baal, because you can drop all these. And in player 1, it's fine. It does pretty good here. Some of the phases, there's immunities, but... And since it's single target, it kind of... it's hard to tell which ones are mine and which ones are theirs. It's nice because you can cast it and then hide. I think a lot of the other class changes are also super exciting. The Druid is getting so many changes. The Assassin and actually having you know, a martial artist who is effective, that's going to be so cool. The changes to the way their combo points work is incredible. Can't wait to see that. Taking away some synergies from the Trap Assassin. Like, imagine being able to make a lightning Trap Assassin, but actually have points left over to play around with, or, you know, fire traps that are effective outside of nightmare difficulty. A blade Trap Assassin. I've never even, you know, tried that before. I think that would be really cool. And then the ladder, of course, I can't wait for. My plan was to run Necro, and I think I'm still going to go that route. I know I realized I didn't use static here. I'm kind of just trying to show off the Hydra damage. Normally I would have started with Hydra. I mean, static. Double Ancient Swords. Garbage. I think I will just jump into a cow game real quick and just demo this build on cows, which is an area where it is not very strong. So, boss killing, pretty good at even in the current environment. Even, you know, Mephisto in player 8, it's pretty good. Baal, player 1, doable with ridiculous gear. And then we're going to jump in and try cows, even in player 1, and just demonstrate that it is not the best. Okay, so we are going to do some cows real quick here, and player 1 difficulty. Now, do I think this is going to be like a new meta-defining build? Probably not. Do I think like it's going to work reasonably well, better than it does now? Definitely. So some of the issues this skill has beyond the casting delay, beyond the cooldown, is the fact that it's single target. Like, there are 3 heads, so you got 3 fire bolts, not fire balls, but fire bolts that come out. They typically target the same enemy. If that enemy dies and they hit something else, that will take damage. But it's like trying to play a firebolt sorceress. And here in player 1 with really high end gear, it works reasonably well. It's definitely not fast by any means. Like, my Frozen Orb, I think, would actually do better here, and Frozen Orb is considered kind of weak for cows. So that, I don't think, is going to change. I don't think they're adding AoE to it. That would be really cool if it shot out, like, fireballs instead of firebolts. But I don't think that's in the cards. But being able to drop 5 Hydras instantly and then being able to move is definitely a big advantage. But there's still not going to be, I think, any Pierce, any AoE. You're still going to be limited in that regard. So I think, you know, having something like Orb as your secondary for taking care of big packs still may be required. And that's going to be tight on skill points unless they modify the synergies for these skills. So is it going to be meta build? I don't know. I'm kind of thinking probably still not. But I think it'll be a fun build. I think it'll be a really awesome build to try out. But that's the biggest limitation. Like, lightning trappers, I think, are a good analog to this. So they have traps. They can drop all of them in, you know, a second. And then those traps pierce, and then they also have the corpse explosion from their trap, which, you know, does so much damage, and it does physical and it does lightning, so it helps them deal with dual immunities without needing to spec into multiple trap types. So that's where the advantage of the Trapper is. I think the Trapper still probably might be better, minus they don't have teleport. But I think being able to drop all your Hydras at one time, and I think them playing around with, you know, hopefully some of the synergies and maybe some of the damage on it will go a long way. But that's assuming they make other changes. They didn't really commit to anything beyond the casting delay, but the fact that they're touching a lot of the skills and the synergies leads me to think maybe there could be more coming, maybe a slight damage modification, hopefully, some changes to the synergy requirement so that you can more easily dual spec. But even if it's just the casting delay, I still think it'll be a niche build that will work for some things like boss killing. I think Mephisto, Baal, Diablo to some extent would work reasonably well. Yeah. But in cows, with, the casting delay right now, it's just not super effective. It just takes too long for them to kill everything. But, man, are they pretty. I love what they did with them. They look so cool. Okay. That's my thoughts on the major sorceress change, my favorite change. Of course, all the other changes I'm super excited about. The class changes, the mercenaries, the ladder starting, new rune words are going to be incredible. Potentially rune word that could impact some of these change specs they talked about. So maybe there's some new items focused on Hydras. That would be interesting. Maybe an item that, turns your fire bolts from your Hydra into fireballs. That's, again, wishful thinking, but I'm just kind of imagining here based off of some of what they said. Yeah, so if you've got any thoughts on this, could Hydra be a, more effective build? Could it, be a top build, or at least viable as they said in that video? Let me know what you think. I'm super excited. Whether or not it's amazing, mediocre, I'm going to probably respec my Battlenet Sorceress to Hydra at least for a little while, just because I love this skill so much, and I'm so happy to have that casting delay gone. Yeah, so thank you for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, check out some of my other Diablo content. I've got a ton of non-Diablo as well, new games, reviews, previews, that sort of thing. If you're into that, check it out, and if you like it, think about subscribing. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.